hours. A lone MiG-29 emerged from the whiteout, and with a single cold weather strike, a winter convoy worth tens of millions.
At 4:31 a.m. The northern frontier lay locked beneath over 35 centimeters of hardened snow, the temperature sinking past -16 degrees, and the storm reducing visibility to a shifting blur of white. Every road, tree line, and ridge faded into the blizzard, leaving the valley silent and sealed. Through that chaos, the MiG-29 carved its path, dropping at 580 knots. The jet angled toward a line of insulated engines buried along a frozen supply route. Two sub-zero JDAM-ERs separated cleanly from the pylons. The detonations didn't produce flames. They burst as towering columns of compressed snow, launching debris and frost nearly 500 meters across the corridor. Metal silhouettes buckled under the concussive wave, vanishing beneath the collapsing ice. One strike fractured the winter calm. And beneath that eruption, a larger chain of events had already begun to unfold. If you witnessed that blast tearing upward through the storm, what would you think was coming next? 3:41 a.m. Winter wrapped the northern forest in a sheet of white silence. Snow drifted sideways in slow, icy waves, and the temperature hovered near -13 degrees, cold enough to mute even the distant hum of machinery. Nothing in the valley suggested movement. Nothing hinted at danger, until a flicker appeared. At 21,000 feet, MiG-29 Gray 19 moved like a shadow across the frozen sky, flying in passive mode, every sensor cold except the infrared lens beneath its fuselage. A report from a border station had flagged a thermal spike no larger than a lantern flame. Most thought it was noise from the storm. Gray 19 was sent to be certain. The pilot rolled slightly to starboard. The flicker sharpened. Not one pulse, but three, aligned across a narrow winter road, engines idling under camouflage tarps. Then it happened. A lone Russian drone, a Forpost-R, rose from the tree line below, its rotors scattering snow in a thin white spiral. It had been hiding on the ground, its thermal suppressed until ignition. The drone turned toward the MiG, locking an optical feed for targeting Gray. 19 reacted first. The jet dipped to 19,000 feet, armed a pair of R-73 short-range interceptors, and released one with a clean, sharp trail of smoke. The missile skimmed the storm edge and struck the drone with a muted flash. No fireball, just a burst of shattered rotors falling like black snowflakes into the trees. It wasn't a major strike, not the one Kiev was waiting for. But the blast exposed something the drone had been guarding. A cold buried line of heat signatures stretching nearly 320 meters, engines warming, formation tight. Whatever lay hidden beneath the frost, it wasn't small. 4:07 a.m. A wall of winter swept across the valley. Snow thickened into a white curtain, erasing the tree line, the roads, even the frozen river that normally reflected moonlight like steel visibility on the ground dropped to less than 50 meters. For most units, it would have been the end of reconnaissance. But not tonight. Ukraine launched two Falcon-IR drones, each weighing barely 6 pounds, designed to navigate low-altitude corridors during storms. They skimmed above the snowpack at just 60 meters, their infrared sensors hunting for anything that matched the anomalies Gray 19 had recorded minutes earlier. At first, nothing, just static. Then the storm parted for a heartbeat. The first Falcon captured a horizontal thermal streak nearly 500 meters long, broken into clusters. 9 winterized transport trucks, engines warming beneath insulated covers. 13 ammunition carriers, heat leaking through their side panels. 1 compact EW node, emitting pulses every 12 seconds like a heartbeat. The Russian response came fast. A Ka-226 scout helicopter lifted above the tree line, its rotor wash scattering snow in broad spirals. The aircraft swept infrared beams across the valley, hunting for the drones threading through the storm. Falcon 2 was caught first. A burst of 7.62 fire slashed upward, and the tiny drone vanished into a bloom of falling ice. Falcon-1 dodged low, slipping under branches coated in frost, transmitting its final grid markers before losing connection in the storm. Above it all, Gray 19 reappeared, using a cloud bank as cover, giving off just enough heat to confuse the helicopter's sensors. The K-226 drifted off course, unable to lock onto anything in the blizzard. And yet, the most important part wasn't the clash. It was the pattern. Falcon-1 had sent back a half-kilometer convoy advancing slowly through a sealed winter corridor. Before we continue, if you were watching those thermal lines appear one by one, hidden under the snow, what would you think was coming next? Because what's about to happen, the answer will come at 4:49 in the morning, and it won't be subtle. 4:49 a.m. The storm thinned just enough for the sky to reveal a faint silver glow. Beneath it, the winter forest lay buried under nearly 30 centimeters of fresh snow, a quiet surface disguising the movement below. But above the clouds, MiG-29, Blue 117 was already in motion. The aircraft climbed through a narrow corridor at 26,000 feet, its fuselage coated with frost, every panel vibrating gently as the jet cut across the frozen air. Blue 117 carried no heavy payloads, only 2 ARX-92 anti-radiation missiles and a cluster of extended-range JDAMS calibrated for cold weather targeting. At 4:51, the convoy appeared. From altitude, the sensors captured 12 self-propelled Koalicja units, each with insulated barrels to prevent cold contraction, 18 supply carriers hauling winter-grade propellant, and a Kite B electronic warfare truck dispersing narrowband interference at precisely timed intervals. The formation stretched nearly 620 meters, moving slow to prevent ice from locking the wheels. The first action was Surgical Blue 117 dropped to 20,000 feet, armed the ARX-92s, and released both in quick succession. Their engines ignited with a low, muffled roar, the kind that disappears inside a snowstorm. The missiles descended in perfect synchronization. 30 seconds later, the EW truck's emissions vanished entirely, leaving the rest of the column exposed under the cold sky. The main descent followed. Blue 117 pushed into a steep 63-degree dive, speed rising beyond 580 knots. Snow and ice streamed along the canopy in thin silver trails. At 13,000 feet, the pilot released 4 cold-weather JDAMERS, each programmed to track its own thermal pattern based on Falcon. One's earlier recordings, the detonations weren't fiery. They were dense, concussive pulses that punched snow upward in towering white plumes. The first explosion severed the convoy's lead elements. The second collapsed the central line. The third and fourth struck near the fuel carriers, dispersing heat across a half-kilometer radius, forcing engines to stall in rapid succession. Within 150 seconds, the entire formation had halted. Metal silhouettes lay scattered and still beneath curtains of drifting snow, their movement erased without a single flare of flame piercing the storm. Blue 117 rose back into the cloud layer, leaving a fractured winter corridor stretching silently below. 5:12 a.m. The storm eased into a slow, drifting snowfall. Thin flakes settled over the forest, coating the broken corridor where the strike had unfolded minutes earlier. The cold sharpened again, dropping to minus 14 degrees, forcing every remaining heat source to stand out like a beacon. From orbit, a reconnaissance satellite passed overhead, capturing a thermal scar nearly 750 meters long. The image showed irregular pockets of warmth, engines cooling, metal contracting, and scattered signatures fading under waves of snow. The convoy no longer formed a line. It had become a pattern of isolated shapes, each detached from the others, each without movement. Russia responded quickly. An IL-22 PP electronic surveillance aircraft lifted from a southern airstrip, climbing to 21,000 feet. Its array swept across the valley, searching for the cause of the collapse. But the interference left behind by the ARX-92 strike disrupted entire layers of the electromagnetic field. Signals bent, returned fragmented, or disappeared entirely within a band stretching over 9 kilometers near the forest edge. Ukraine exploited the disruption MiG-29 Gray 22, and Gray 24 entered the sector at medium altitude, flying escort for Blue 117's withdrawal route. Their radars ran in low probability modes, sending only narrow pulses that blended with atmospheric static. Below them, small reconnaissance drones maneuvered back into the strike zone, tracing pockets of residual heat trapped beneath the collapsing snowpack. What they found confirmed the scale of the halt. Every vehicle, Koalitsiya units, supply carriers, insulated fuel trucks, registered zero coordinated thermal output. A convoy meant to reinforce the northern line had frozen in place long before reaching its destination. Across the frontier, artillery crews waiting for resupply reported missed check-ins, delayed transmissions, and silent channels normally active at dawn. The disruption had begun spreading outward, tightening around the sector like an unseen pressure front. And beyond the drifting snow, a new phase of instability was only beginning to take shape. 5:48 a.m. Daylight had not yet formed, but the sky shifted into a pale gray, the kind that announces the approach of morning long before the sun arrives. Snowfall lightened to a thin mist, drifting in slow spirals over a landscape that no longer resembled the map drawn hours earlier. Across the northern flank, the first effects of the halted convoy emerged. Ground radar stations along the Yursk-Kreminna belt reported 34 separate signal divergences, minute delays where coverage once overlapped cleanly. These weren't outages, they were distortions, the kind that appear when a command node fails to synchronize with its forward units. Operators rechecked their systems twice, then a third time. Nothing was wrong with the hardware. Something was wrong with the network. Ukraine recognized the opportunity instantly. Border reconnaissance teams advanced 1 to 1.5 kilometers into a strip long considered impassable. During winter, fresh snow revealed patterns the storm had kept hidden. Abandoned tire tracks, discarded fuel drums designed for extreme cold, and 2 temporary shelters left in haste. Communication logs told an even clearer story. In just 1 hour, 21 Russian units reported delayed transmissions. Encrypted traffic from the Northern Brigade arrived with timestamps drifting by 46 seconds, then 82, then nearly 2 minutes. For a frontline dependent on synchronized requests, the delay was profound. Meanwhile, an air defense battery positioned near the Serebryanka tree line reduced its readiness level after missing a scheduled resupply message. Farther east, a battalion coordinating artillery fire patterns paused operations entirely when its expected Koalitsiya reinforcement never appeared. The disruption wasn't just local, it was radiating outward, bending the rhythm of the entire northern corridor. And as Ukrainian analysts pieced together each anomaly on their screens, a sharper realization emerged. The collapse of one winter convoy had begun to loosen the structure of an entire front. What followed in Chapter 6 would confirm how far the effects would travel. 6:27 a.m. Dawn pushed faint light across the frozen tree line, revealing a landscape reshaped by the night's events. The strike zone, once a narrow winter road, now appeared as a 900-meter scar carved through layers of snow and ice. Metallic outlines lay half buried beneath fresh drifts, their heat signatures reduced to fading traces. The first satellite pass from the west confirmed the scale of the disruption. No engines idled, no movement registered. The formation that had been destined for the northern advance was frozen in place, undone long before it reached its intended firing positions. Across the Russian network, consequences surfaced immediately. Artillery units in 3 districts reported firing delays of 20 to 36 minutes. A rare breakdown in winter coordination. Fuel convoys, rerouted through secondary ice corridors, saw their travel times nearly double, while relay hubs along the Lisova stretch displayed 47 timestamp mismatches during a single cycle. Evidence of a communication lattice struggling to recover. Ukraine observed the instability with caution. small units advanced into lightly defended ridges, gaining 200 to 300 meters in territories that had resisted movement for months. These weren't territorial victories. They were signs of an opponent forced to recalibrate under pressure. Inside Moscow's operational rooms, discussions grew tense. Questions surfaced about the vulnerability of winterized supply chains, concerns over system compatibility, and the unsettling realization that a single intercepted convoy had exposed structural gaps far beyond its monetary value. As full daylight spread across the frozen corridor, one truth settled in. The strike had not ended a mission. It had quietly shifted the balance of an entire northern front. As the winter sun crept fully above the frost-covered ridge, the true scale of the disruption came into focus. A single strike in a snowstorm had rippled outward, bending supply routes, slowing artillery cycles, and forcing entire brigades to adjust their footing before dawn. Nothing about the battlefield looked the same as it had only hours earlier. The forest, the roads, even the command networks, all carried the imprint of that quiet, precise moment when the winter corridor fractured, and yet, this was only one chapter in a conflict shaped as much by timing as by strength. If you were watching this unfold in real time, every signal shift, every delayed transmission, every silent gap in the snow, what part of this operation would stay with you the longest? Share your thoughts below.